Hello and welcome to 25 Cents, a video game podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Nick. Each episode will be making the rounds through our four corners: console, PC, Apple, and tabletop, with a focus on games that are great to play if you've got kids.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on the web at Goodstuff.network. Oh, hit stop instead of fade. It's going to be a good day. Hi, Nick.
Yeah, we're starting. Hey, we're getting back in the swing of things. We had a little hiatus.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. And you had a birthday.
Yeah. It's not a big one yet. That's I guess the next milestone is next year.
Okay.
But happy birthday to me.
Yes. We'll get into the gifts.
Almost an old. Actually, I didn't do much for my birthday, but my son's birthday is also in October, and we had some new games there, so we'll talk about those in a little bit.
Nice.
I think let's visit Console Corner first. There's a couple interesting updates there. So I was hoping that the Playdate would be my birthday present to myself.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's no update on the orders yet, the pre-orders yet. So
was it we're supposed to have arrived now or shipping now, or
they were vague about it, but they were kind of saying fall. So I was thinking about now, but it'll probably be before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's I'm definitely still excited about that, especially some of the development kit stuff that I've mentioned before that they don't have a lot of details on yet, but I think there's some interesting game making opportunities there.
Yeah, I'm curious how the reality, like every person I've read as far as review units or whatever, or teasers and things, they're all very hyped about it, but they're also friends of Panic generally, which makes sense. And so
yes,
I'm curious how the reality of a little device like that actually plays out, but excited to see. So coming soon.
In other console news, there's some expansion stuff going on in the Nintendo world.
Yeah, so they have, like, very confusingly, in a way that only Nintendo manages to do, they have their Nintendo Online is a subscription service you can have. That's, at least Canada here, is $35 a year. I think for the family plan is what we pay. I think that's right. Sounds cheaper than I thought it was. But anyways, and then they now added a Nintendo Online expansion pack is the upgrade. So, which includes everything in the regular Nintendo Switch Online stuff, as well as some extra things. Most notably, the upcoming Animal Crossing expansion pack is included in that, or you can buy it for free for buy it for $33 Canadian. American pricing probably slightly less than that.
Oh, interesting. So if you have Animal Crossing and you add Nintendo Online expansion pack, you get the Animal Crossing expansion, or you can buy the Animal Crossing expansion at retail.
Yeah, and so that's where it's like, and in Nintendo fashion, they also announced a free Animal Crossing expansion pack that's coming out. And then there's this new DLC that's coming as part of either buy or... So I can only imagine the confusion for a parent going and like, oh, my kid was talking about the Animal Crossing thing, and they look online, it's like, oh, it's free. Great. I don't have to do anything. There's nothing there. But then the free one is actually not the one they want, or vice versa. And then whether you buy it on its own or you have to upgrade that to upgrade your online membership or whatever. And that's, all happening on the same day, November 5th this week here.
Yeah, the online, the emulation stuff that's included is definitely interesting to me. Having played a fair bit of N64, especially N64 multiplayer. Kind of, I guess that would have been about end of middle school into high school for me with friends, as well as Sega Genesis, which was my wife's console that she grew up with because her older brother had one. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty exciting. I think we've talked about that a little bit before, but at the same time, I haven't been playing the basic online that much.
Exactly.
So is it really worth bumping up my subscription?
So they do have,
I think $20 a yes, or $30 extra US a year.
Yeah. And like Kenny says in the chat, I'll keep playing my dusty N64. Yeah, which definitely makes sense. And like, I think for anybody who's looking at, if you're an Animal Crossing player, you're looking at the DLC, Happy Home Paradise it's called, I guess it would make sense. You might as well upgrade for 1 year to get that. And I presume you get to keep that, I guess. That's the other part of it that I don't know how that works, is if you keep that or if the DLC is part of then just as long as you're a subscriber, I would assume that's actually probably what it is. So it goes away when you stop paying for it. is how I would read that. But
Well, I don't
I
know
don't know.
because it like Tetris 99, right? Like you get access to it partially through the Nintendo Online subscription, but then there's additional game modes that you pay with Nintendo coin separately from your online. So it's just they've mashed together like four different business models, and it's really not clear
Yeah.
what you're getting. I think you noted that the trailer for the Nintendo Online expansion pack is now Nintendo's most disliked video on YouTube.
Over
So no
100,000
one is happy
dislikes.
with the
No.
announcement.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it's not because of the content of the. If I could get rid of this stupid ad, brother, I hate the internet. The I'm assuming it's not because of the content of the stuff like the N64 or Sega Genesis or the DLC. Like I think everybody's happy with those things. It's just the way that they're pricing it, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's just not
I
funny how
would
it feels.
imagine some of the cost because they don't just have first party games, so some of the cost has to be paying some of the license holders, right? Like,
Yeah,
uh, they have to be paying Sega some chunk of your subscription every month to cover having the games available.
yeah, and like you hope that it's a good deal, and obviously everybody involved is getting paid appropriately. But it also feels a bit like for Nintendo, they're in a bit of a power position there, where it's like, hey Sega, nobody's buying your games or playing them anymore, really, in any meaningful way, other than maybe Kenny and other folks who have old consoles they're still using or emulators they're stealing online. How about we make it available on the expansion pack here, and we could probably almost eat the cost for the amount of money that it would cost them, plus their own
Right.
licensing. I mean, I want creators to get paid for sure as part of this, but it feels a little like they're still selling the hardware at the same price that was at launch, and it feels like they could have just thrown this into the Switch Online bundle and actually gotten a whole bunch more people interested in paying for Switch Online, who I assume probably aren't paying. But maybe lots of people. I don't know. Do you guys pay? Kenny, if you're still watching, do you have a Switch and do you pay for the? Anybody out there, if you're watching or listening later, are you still paying for the Switch Online at all, or have you dropped that because you're not playing anything multiplayer? So Kenny said it's the worst way to tell us they're not making an N64 classic.
Yeah, I think they're for various reasons well invested in emulation, and we might touch on hardware more a little later in the Apple corner.
Yeah.
Speaking of Sega, obviously they develop games for various platforms, and they have this deal for online emulation, and they've got the Sonic movie franchise coming back, right? But they just announced a strategic partnership with Microsoft for cloud-based video game development stuff. It's still all very vague and businessy, but
Yeah.
kind of an interesting, because obviously Microsoft has strength in games with Xbox, right? I mean, they have a lot of cachet there, and most games are developed for Windows PC, or many games are developed for Windows PC, right? But then it's now all like Sega brand coming in, but powered by Azure, and so there's some interesting stuff there. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, it's funny to think of Sega still thinking back to the Sega Genesis and the platform, the hardware, kind of like that was their last. They had one more, not Dreamcast.
The
Dreamcast
Dreamcast
was
did
theirs, right?
not do well in the market, but I think for people who had one, they loved it, and it
Yeah,
had some really interesting ideas.
yeah. But definitely, it's been a long time since Sega's been a name in video games, as far as the general public would be aware of, anyways. But yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that they'd still be around at this point, I guess. So it's cool to see. And speaking of Microsoft Xbox, if you're a Discord Nitro user, I think this is how I get this. I just got a notification. There's 2 free months of Xbox Game Pass, their promo, which I did last year, and somehow seemed to last for 6 months for us. So our kids kind of became used to the idea that they had Game Pass library for free on the Xbox, and so we just talked about it today with my kids that this is available again for 2 months. So we were strategically figuring out when the best time was
Right.
to activate it, because I think you can activate
And
it
which
at any point.
games?
Yeah. So, and related to that, NHL 22 for any sports fans is now out. My son quickly grabbed it from the library, and so we were like, okay, when it has to go back to the library, then we'll activate the Game Pass promo, because it'll probably be on Game Pass as well as part of EA Sports something or
Got
other.
it. So when you do like the borrowed disc game, the save transfers locally on your console.
Yeah, it's kind of handy that way, and it's even the game is like obviously it's just a disc and it's installed, and then you start using the Game Pass version. It seems to all just work, which is nice. You don't have to sort of just well, much like what we've experienced with original game on Apple iOS devices, and then it gets added to Arcade, but it's technically a different version now because it's the whatever Tiny Wings Plus or whatever version,
Mm-hmm.
and your stuff doesn't necessarily carry over. But yeah, so there'll be some hockey being played this winter in our household,
Nice.
as you might guess from the Canadian cliche. Uh, Moving
Yes,
over
I've
to
noticed when we were trick or treating on Sunday, most of the houses on the street we went on were watching the Seattle Kraken
oh
game.
yeah, right.
So hockey is now a thing people care about here specifically. Um,
Yeah, it's funny how like an expansion team like that, especially these days, I guess they don't often add new teams, but like it's definitely captures like that's part of the reason even for my son's interest because we played NHL 21. I don't think we own it, but it was part of Game Pass. Kind of you play it for so long and then you kind of forget about it. But even just the fact that Seattle Kraken are in NHL 22 is enough reason for my son to even want to like he requested on his
got
Christmas
it,
list
because
or whatever.
it's new team,
Yeah,
new arena, new rosters.
yeah, it's kind of like a
Interesting,
DLC or whatever new content that the
right?
NHL gets all across New Jerseys they sell, obviously all that kind of stuff. But even in the video game world, it adds new excitement there as well. So, right, heading over to PC Corner, and
There's been a lot of buzz online that I've seen on Twitter the last week or so um, about NFTs and video games and the intersection of them. Non-fungible tokens are a blockchain technology. They're often associated with cryptocurrency. There's been a lot of buzz this year involving them, mostly in the art world, because there's a lot of back and forth on verifying ownership of digital art and what that all means. A lot of them have been more in the scam/pyramid scheme, get rich quick territory, and it seems like some of that is coming over into the game world in a couple different ways. A few news bullets I saw. Someone had created or was prototyping an NFT game using like Mario assets. And understandably, the Nintendo lawyers came knocking, and
shocking.
I don't know what the developers of this were thinking. Um, so that's one area where you kind of people are creating NFTs out of to claim ownership over digital stuff that they don't actually have the rights to, which
That's
is kind of a whole
yeah.
funny thing. Um, uh, Steam a few weeks ago announced that they're banning NFT and blockchain based games from the Steam store. I suspect that's a little bit more of a protecting their business factor, right? Because it creates an economy that's outside of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and outside of their platform. But of course, as with most blockchain technologies, there's a pretty substantial environmental factor right now in the way all of the math is done behind the scenes for a lot of these, and to facilitate the exchange of the tokens or cryptocurrency. Um, I also saw there's a funny tweet from Crypto the Necro Dancer, which I think we've mentioned on the show. I played it a bit last year, and it's been out for a while. Um, Emphasizing that they are not anything to do with crypto. They they are the other the other crypt word. So that was pretty funny. Um, but then there was a big viral thread that was going around kind of how from a game designer about how using NFTs in games is bad. And I think this was prompted by Ubisoft doing an announcement around how they were investing in NFTs and blockchain technology for their future games. And there are a lot of good thoughts in here from a game design perspective, but I think one of the core ideas is there's not really anything that the technology brings to the game that's good or adds value other than for the people who are speculating in the value of the tokens themselves, right? Because the game is already a controlled environment, and
Mm-hmm.
there's basically nothing you can all of the proposals around what they allow you to do in a game, you can do by the game developer maintaining a database of what's allowed in the game, right? Like it doesn't need this whole distributed,
Yeah.
anonymized wallet blockchain technology to do that because the game has everything. And I mean, you saw that there were whole real world economies built on top of every major MMO. Like I think when I was actively playing, World of Warcraft, I used one of the estimators, and my main raiding character was allegedly worth like $1,500 because of all the gear I had accumulated in game. So if I had wanted to turn my account over to someone else, in theory, I could have found a third party market and done some exchange, and they could have taken over my high level character, right? Now,
Yeah,
of
and really
course,
the like
that
only
has no real value, but
yeah. The only like interesting thing or thing that game developers could build in is like some sort of way to easily sell or transfer your account ownership, right? Because I would presume that
Mm.
in World of Warcraft and related like Diablo 2, etc., that they don't make that super easy and it's a awkward exchange and there isn't you have to sort of hand over an email account or whatever and
Yeah, most of it is not official
yeah,
channels. Yeah, a lot of the. Although I think wasn't. Do you think the Diablo 3 auction house briefly experimented with real world money, and there
right.
was a huge uproar over that several years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. In general, I mean, the game developer, they maintain a list of every object that exists in the game world, and so getting into there's a long Bloomberg article on the topic that was very positive on the role of NFTs in games, and they're talking about like, hey, what if you bought. So you're the only person in the world who can play Mario right now because you bought the Mario NFT, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, there's nothing that the game developer couldn't build into the game mechanics to say, hey, you player X have given us enough money to have the rights to play to be the only person in the world playing this character right now. So yeah, it seems like a money chasing problem that doesn't exist kind of thing. And that Bloomberg article also dives into some investor guy who's like running what in WoW parlance used to be called a gold farm, but he was basically running a gold farm in the Philippines where he's paying for access to the game and then giving access to several people who work for him to play the game continuously to generate in-game NFTs that then he can then sell and they get a cut. Like it's such a
Yeah.
weird experimental market right now. I think it's gonna shake out and mostly be nothing, but it's all just kind of weird and
Well,
I
the
don't know.
one that's like, what is it called here? I'm just trying to Axie Infinity. I've heard a lot about the game, which is
Yeah,
basically built on blockchain, whatever. I don't know the words I'm using are right, but
they can be used somewhat interchangeably, but yeah, I mean, blockchain's the abstract technology. Cryptocurrency is one, you know,
yeah,
implementation on top of the blockchain that can be exchanged for real money, and then NFTs are another thing on top of blockchain that also often can be exchanged for cryptocurrency or other real money. It's weird.
yeah. And the game, I know I've even from clients of mine like who are in this space. It's like this game is like changing people's worlds or their lives, and not just because of investment from like people investing in the game company, but like the players of the game are making
Right.
huge bank on this doing this game and playing this game. And I get the idea. I don't have a problem with somebody making money playing a game like if you're playing Fortnite, but this feels more like somehow just even less real, more fake. I don't know, all kind of cloud or pyramid schemey.
Yeah, I mean it's first mover, right? So like right now, everyone who gets in early is making bank because there's still new people coming in, so the value's going up. But it is very likely, whether it's this particular game or other games in general, that the bubble will burst and a set of people will be left holding the bag. Um, and
Yeah,
I think, I mean, there's even like a cryptocurrency scam I saw that happened the other week where Squid Game, super popular Netflix show, someone who had nothing to do with the movie created squid tokens, so issued a cryptocurrency because it's fairly easy to do on top of some of these networks on the blockchain, and sold a bunch of them. And then the people who bought them discovered there was literally no marketplace where they could be sold, and they had like handed over, real money or other cryptocurrencies to the creator of this thing, and now they're just left holding some numbers in a
Yeah.
computer that have no value anymore, right? It was literally just a scam. They had no rights to it, right? So I think that's my concern is, will that drive either game players or game developers to change the way games work to enable this stuff? And so some people will be like getting rich quick and having this great time, and being able to like pay for school or something because they got into Axie Infinity at the right time. But that's going to require, as with most pyramid scheme adjacent things, a bunch of people to
Yeah.
get screwed. And it's like it's worse than the all the IAP style games, right? Because
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I'm just going to read this quote from this Bloomberg article because it's from the co-founder of Axie Infinity. It said players can actually own the game items and they can see that they are scarce, like in NFT form. And it's much more real than when you see someone wearing a Louis Vuitton bag on the street. You have literally no idea if this thing is real or not, which is so ass backwards because like you could literally go over to that Louis Vuitton bag, pick it up and see, or even just take it to Louis Vuitton's store and say, is this one of your bags? And then you would know if that thing is real. And so he says, just that doubt that you have is so fitting for the world today because everything is so fake. The thing that blockchain brings is trust. That then extends to digital assets, which, it's just like right click and save is I don't know. There's just so much going on there it's
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
my with my technology hat on, I think the vast majority of current, I probably, I don't know, 90%, if I had to guess, of blockchain applications could just be a database or a distributed database. Like you just don't need all of that other stuff in there, which is getting at the true stuff. I don't mean to rant about all that, but it's similar to in the machine learning space, right? Like it's a big buzzword. Vast majority of current applications of machine learning could just be done with like statistical methods, linear regression or something. But if you slap machine learning on it, it's really easy to apply these frameworks. You get to sell a thing.
You get funding.
You get funding from investors. So I think we're just in that bubble phase, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere long term. And if anything, because of the financial and regulatory implications of some of this stuff, I think maybe that some of the companies that go long in it are going to find themselves burned. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think the early movers, like you said, will get in and get out. Although
Yeah.
a lot of those folks, like karate, whatever, leaders, thought leaders are like
they're true believers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Moving on a little bit because we could probably rant on this for a while, but I love this quote that you found from John Scalzi for nearly 2 decades now, the video game industry has vastly overestimated how much I want to play their games online with other people.
Yeah.
I'm sure every post, I don't know what age demographic, but 30-plus-year-old person is like, back in my day, we could play the game.
Yeah.
We didn't have to have friends.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the first game I played that was truly online, but it would have been over dial-up. I might have been using, there was a third-party Mac app called Game Ranger that would it would emulate a local network over dial-up. So a bunch of games that could find LAN partners to play with would be able to you'd be running Game Ranger as a proxy.
Right.
And so then you could see your Game Ranger friends over dial-up. So that's how I think I played Masters of Orion 2 that way with random people on it. Anyway, Scalzi's an author I like, and he's an old school early blogger, and his wit has translated well to Twitter. But yeah, I think I mostly align sometimes. Even like I said, as a former big MMO player, these days I mostly just want to get online, or when it's game time, I don't want to have to match someone, or the bad feeling of getting schooled by some teenager in Fortnite or whatever. I just want to play a quick little relaxing game mini Motorways or something.
I actually think, now that you say that, my brain actually thinks when I play Fortnite, my brain thinks I'm just playing a game against bots, and for all I know, half of them could be, because they've done that too in Fortnite and other games.
Right.
But I just think of them as bots, and it's like, oh, that bot is programmed to be better, and so that's why I lost. I think that's actually subconsciously what goes on for me when I'm playing that, because I'm not really worried about the actual other people, other than playing it with my kids, let's say, or whatever, on our devices and things like that. That then it's like obviously we're playing together, but I don't really consciously play against someone else. That's actually probably what I like about NHL is like it's just me against the computer, and I can set the difficulty level to be where I want it, and then it's a fun game versus and challenging
Yeah.
versus like way too
Well,
easy or way too hard.
that is an interesting distinction, right, between playing with friends, people you know, and playing like randomly against strangers, and what that difference is. Because certainly, we going back to like kind of the N64 discussion, that was multiplayer, but it was all about four people in the same room with
Mm-hmm.
tiny little squares on the same TV, right? Um,
Or you can cheat and look at your friend's screen.
yeah, that was my golden eye play because I was really good at memorizing the maps, so I could like glance and see where someone was, and like go chase them from the other direction. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Apple Corner. You
Apple
played a
Corner.
whole bunch
So
of arcade games. Looks like since we've
yeah,
been going.
tried a bunch. I'll just rattle through them real quick. Crossy Road Plus came out. So again, Plus games. It's a reissue of old Crossy Road. Um, the whole family at one point a few Saturdays ago was just we were sitting in bed in our PJs, all playing Crossy Road and like kind of sharing how far we had gotten. Um, the the core mechanic is still the same. A lot of the characters are the same. A lot of the design is the same, but they've added this sort of overworld view where you can see all of the characters you've unlocked and collected. Oh, look, didn't need an NFT to get the Frankenstein guy or to and play it in the game. So you can see everything you've collected there. So that's kind of a new mechanic. Um, but yeah, it's fun. It's like the classic. Tiny Wings Plus. So Tiny Wings was an early iOS game. I had it. Boy, it's got
Yeah.
to be close to 10 years ago now. And what was interesting about this one is while my save did not come over, and there's like a new kind of mechanic world where you're doing this four bird chase thing. Um, all of my achievements did. So
Hmm.
it like through Game Center, it still knew that I had gotten to like the eighth island at some point in the past or the seventh island. So that one was fun. I was finding I was not as good at it as I used to be. So I don't know if I'm rusty or just like my timing got off, but I remember being pretty good at it, and not so much now.
I wonder if the
Um,
like increased responsiveness, I guess, of modern devices, like whereas in the past, like you'd press and it would actually be more forgiving of your
oh
touchability or
yeah,
something, like whereas now it's much more precise and
yeah,
so
you got higher frame rate,
yeah.
higher touch sampling frequency. Yeah, you
As
might be right.
always,
That
blame the
it's trickier.
controller. Always blame the
Yes,
controller. That's the
yeah.
key.
Mario made me fall. And then Mini Motorways had a little update. They added their hometown of Wellington, New Zealand, which I haven't unlocked yet because I hadn't been playing for a while. But they also, I noticed, mechanically added roundabouts. So that's an interesting kind of intersection you can do now, where you can add, I think, 8 angled directions into a single rotary, and it kind of keeps traffic flowing. I think I like it better than the way stoplights work. But as the developers have said, the game, you're supposed to lose eventually. The
Yeah.
whole point is that the traffic eventually becomes to a snarl as every car tries to get individually to every place.
Yeah, I like for
Um,
anybody like a mini motorways is still one of my favorite chill
yes.
play a game on my phone for even like a before bed game. It's like such a nice chill game that it feels. I'm sure I would probably do better if I just read a book before I go to sleep. So anybody's listening, can don't bother
I
tweeting
mean,
me.
this isn't a book
Yeah, exactly.
podcast.
But for being a screen game, whatever thing, right? It is a nice chill. Like just there's enough like brain interactions that you can kind of drop off the things of the day, drop off your brain, and you can kind of focus on that. But it's not so stressful that you're like now we're just
Yeah.
replacing old other stress with video virtual stress or NFT stress for that matter.
Yeah, I think what I like about Mini Motorways, right? It's got a little bit of the kind of Sim City, City Skylines vibe you're planning, but there's none of the complicated budgeting simulation stuff, and nothing's permanent, right? You can always just pause, like take back any roads you want, rebuild everything, and resume. And it's like your previous layout never happened.
Yeah, Yeah,
So
exactly.
so it feels much more forgiving in that regard.
Yeah.
Um,
While we were gone to the new Apple announcements, I think it had,
yes.
we didn't talk about it much at all, but just in brief, like new, so the M1 chip, that Apple Silicon M1 Pro, M1 Max are out in the MacBook Pros. It's feels like a confusing time to pick which laptop you'd want to buy as an Apple fan. I'm not in need right now, although mine has been requiring a daily reboot to just function, and it's making me want to be able to buy one, but I'm not. But anyways, the for gaming, it feels like a really good time to be on the Mac, at least, especially Apple Arcade adjacent
Yeah,
games.
I think the main limitations right now are of game availability, right? The hardware is quite a jump, and over on the podcast Upgrade, they did an interview with two Apple chip execs about the M1, and they had some interesting stuff to say. In particular, to your question of like, oh, which one do I get, right? And they were kind of saying that, yeah, unlike well, there's an iPad or an iPhone. I mean, there's multiple models, but there's a lot more configurability in the MacBook Pros. Is that yeah, they're kind of thinking about the different roles
Mm-hmm.
of who's using them. Like, are you writing code and compiling it on the road? Okay, well, then this one's probably more for you. Are you doing podcast editing or other audio work? Well, then this one's more for you. Are you doing video game asset design? Well, then you need this one with more RAM. And yeah, there's a link in the show notes about the GPU performance, being close to some discrete gaming laptops. And that's even with, in most cases, the games running through Rosetta 2, right? Because they're Intel
Yeah,
games. They haven't
that's
been
what's
ported to
insane.
Apple Silicon yet. And so it really gives you a sense of just how far ahead of the curve the Apple Silicon team is on some of these things, especially compared to Intel and maybe also compared to NVIDIA um, and
The,
AMD.
Yeah, and the one main issue, like as far as going back to like gaming specifically on the Mac platform, is that these things do not, as far as I've heard or read, do not allow you to run Boot Camp anymore. So Windows dual
Correct.
booting, so which is the only way I've been able to game on a computer. Basically, is having my Intel MacBook Pro. I can boot camp or reboot into Windows basically, and then game. It works really good as a gaming platform that way, but that's not an option anymore. So I guess I'm curious to see how this all flushes out. Because for me, if I was to like tomorrow buy a new MacBook Pro with the M1 chip, I'm basically also losing, if I sold my current MacBook Pro, my Windows gaming platform. So I'm kind of like, in a very first world sense, having to buy two new
Yes.
computers instead of just one. And obviously, I can just keep my old one, I guess, and run it as a gaming laptop or whatever. But that's beside the point in this theoretical
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, and I had boot camp on my old iMac, and I would boot and play a few PC only games that were in my Steam library there. I played like Star Trek Online that way for a while, or No Man's Sky that way for a while. Um, my this new iMac that I'm on is an Apple M1 chip. I don't have a boot camp partition. I can't set one up. I think you can run Windows 10 in parallels now, but it wouldn't really be performant for gaming because it's virtualization and everything. Um, I suppose I mean, there is an ARM version of Windows 10, but it's not supported on Apple Silicon yet. So maybe that would help. But then again, the games probably wouldn't run right on it because they're mostly going to be built for an Intel like
Mm-hmm.
gaming rig. So I've kind of already given up on my old Steam library in that regard, and I had other games that were like already not supported because um, what was it? Catalina got rid of 64-bit or sorry 32-bit libraries, right? So
Yeah.
like certain older game binaries wouldn't run anymore. Um, so yeah, I mean it's a transitional period. I think for me, instead of I keep saying, oh, maybe I want a gaming PC, but like I don't know, I don't need VR. I don't need Zuckerberg's metaverse or anything. So I think maybe my future is like hoping that, and I know was it XCloud does this? I think is or GeForce,
Yeah, both of
one of them,
those. Yeah.
where you can just run your Steam library on a cloud PC. with low latency. So maybe that's the direction I need to go.
Yeah, that's Xbox Gaming has definitely tried that, and it's been a while since I played with that. Maybe when we renew our 2-month free thing, we'll try that out again just to see where it's at. But definitely in browser with the controller still, etc. It feels hacky and weird, but it seems to work. I mean, that's like we're having this video chat over a browser basically, and that still feels broken in my brain, but it works apparently.
Yeah, I don't think I've fully grokked the web as application platform. And I know, at least in the case of some of the game streaming platforms, they're using a progressive web application technology, and that's partially because on at least iOS, Apple doesn't want you to do an end run around the App Store, right? So like you either just have someone load it up in Safari, mobile Safari, or you have to do this weird thing where you create like an app for every game in the library, which is like a whole weird workaround.
All right.
Yeah. It's an impressive technological leap for sure, and it's not clear yet how it shakes out for gaming on the Mac.
Yeah. It's just not going to end well. Just assume that gaming on the Mac is not going to end with a fun.
Yes.
And you'll be pleasantly surprised for the brief periods of time where it does work. That's my experience.
Yes.
Townscaper is a game. I thought it's not Apple Arcade. It's just a standalone game, right? And it's designed just.
Yes.
Oh no, it's iPhone, iPad. But that looks like it would scratch the similar kind of mini Motorways.
Yeah. So this one is it's harder to call it a game, right? It's more like a toy box. And I had seen this one on, I think, Steam Early Access a year or two ago, which is where it came out first. But it's now out for iOS for, I think, $5 US. And it's like you're just kind of casually throwing together this little.
Sorry, I distracted you with.
Oh, yeah, you're just throwing together this little like Venetian town kind of vibe, like building this little terracotta houses over the water, and as you kind of tap and it'll like kind of auto extend and build like funky stilts and bridges, and you can join things together. And yeah, it's just this like chill creative thing, and the engine lets you create these beautiful little towns. I've not put this on the family iPad yet, but I know when my son is less busy with school and such, he will get a kick out of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of what I was Googling there. There's a game called Dorf Romantic. I think we've talked about it maybe before. I forget it if we have, so forgive me. But if I could ever get past the ads, it's like blend of Carcassonne and Islanders game. So it's kind of like you get tiles and you have to build the city, and it sounds similar to Townscaper. I think there's a bit more of like a scoring to it and stuff that in terms of like a game platform. Right. But it's Windows only, Steam based, and I'm getting surrounded by ads, so I'm just going to stop now. But similar kind of vibe that I have it on my Steam wish list, and it was on sale for a couple dollars off, and I was tempted and didn't buy it because then I just thought about having to boot camp switch and didn't.
Yeah.
So, but
the activation energy wasn't there.
It's definitely a vibe, I think, for a lot of gamers, especially like chill gaming after pandemic life or in pandemic life, wherever we are here, is kind of a nice break for sure for that kind of stuff. So, and you're free from your Good Sudoku.
Yeah, so good Sudoku Plus we've mentioned, but I was like, I'd gotten a daily puzzle streak going, and so then I kind of felt like, oh, like I got to keep going, right? Like I got to do the 3 daily puzzles every day, and they do it like the NYT crossword or whatever, where it's really easy on Mondays and really really hard on Sundays. And I was realizing like end of the week I was spending easily 20 minutes trying to just solve some really hard Sudokus just to keep my streak going. And then I accidentally missed a day, and I was like, oh, whatever it is about my brain and maintaining like streaks, I don't have to anymore. I'm free. I can go play something else. I can pick up mini Motorways. So that's a me problem mostly, but a lot of games, especially on arcade, where we kind of think the business model is based on time in game. They have a lot of mechanics to try and pull you back in every day.
Yeah, it makes me wonder over time here whether we're going to see more, like we are seeing more of that kind of stuff, like sort of little mini gamification stuff to pull you back in that isn't as bad as like in-app purchase kind of stuff, but it still is, like you said, a little triggering some sort of addiction hormone, whatever the thing
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So some of those kind of pathways in the brain, I don't know how they work, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I think related to that, so iOS 15.1 came out with support for the one new Game Center feature, which are in-app events. And so this is where if you're in the App Store, and I guess I don't know who like kind of browses the App Store in this way. I mean, I check in on the arcade tab, but I'm not really. I go there when I have a specific app in mind. But if you're in the App Store, there's now some places where either between games you have or games you might want, the developers can push, kind of content updates, right? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, kind of like a Fortnite season announcement or similar. And I guess the idea is, yeah, it's another place where you can say, hey, come try this special thing that's today only or this week only. um, get in. It's that early mover advantage, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it makes sense. Like in the arcade style, that it would come to that. There's a lot of use for it, obviously, in the real world, whatever virtual streaming, events that are happening now. And if you miss them, I could see like they use the example of a TikTok live stream or Disney new movie on Disney Plus or whatever. And so it makes sense that it would come to Apple Arcade. But yeah, like you said, I basically load up the arcade tab when there's a new game I've remembered is available, or I'm
mhm.
updating my apps because I'm an old fashioned person and do it manually myself instead of letting it do it for me. So I like to see the little number go down. Speaking of weird
Mhm.
brain pathways, as they get updated. I'm not quite in the sick level. I know some folks like to post screenshots of like how many apps they need to get updated and see who can last the longest, kind of thing. That's not my game there. I just like to see whatever new features are
That's
added to.
a different kind of streak.
Yeah,
That's the intersection of our two brains right there.
exactly.
Um, yeah, and then I think the only other arcade thing I saw was Crayola Create and Play Plus. So again, it's a plus game. This one is very much for little kids, so it's rated 4 plus, but I would say it's more for the kind of preschool age, so 3 to 4 range. There's coloring, there's different little mini games. I even checked with my son. It's like, oh, you sure you want this? This is definitely for littler kids. He's like, yeah, it'll be fun. So he tried it out. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any stickiness there because it's not it's the kind of game that would have been good when we first gave him access to the iPad a couple years ago.
Yeah,
But it's good that there's a range of options within the arcade banner there for especially for younger kids. And as we've seen with the whole Plus series of games, it's an easy way for Apple to kind of build out the arcade library. They make a deal with the developer and say, hey, bring your game over to arcade. And Apple gets the benefit of saying how big of a bundle arcade is.
yeah, and including name brands like Crayola or whatever too. And I could totally
Yeah,
see the benefit of having this for parents on road trips or whatever, where you're just like hand the kid the
yeah.
iPad, he
It's
can't do other stuff with it. And
and again, the arcade advantage, right? I don't know what the business model of the original Crayola app was because I haven't looked at the old one, but I've seen coloring apps for little kids where it's like, oh, you want to draw that character?
yeah,
You better get your parents to pay $1, right? Like,
yeah,
or sign up for $20 a month of unlimited coloring book, right? Like, there's a lot of that in the space for little kid apps, and that gets dangerously expensive fast.
yeah, especially when it's accidental purchases. So,
Yeah.
all right, briefly in Tabletop Corner, you had some birthday gifts. Is this your birthday gifts?
No, this was my son got
Oh,
two
right.
games for his birthday. So one was Tsuro Phoenix Rising. So we had definitely played the original Tsuro at one point, and it's got a similar mechanic, except instead of the only way to win being the last one to die, there's this additional mechanic where you can collect stars. And so if you're the first to 7 stars, as you zip around the board in with your Phoenix, you can win that way. Um, and yeah, it's this cool like kind of path building game. And if you're playing more aggressively, you can place your tiles to create paths that send your opponents off the board. Um,
Mm.
or you can just kind of play more nicely and just kind of plan out your own swooping around. But it's a fun one. It's a pretty quick play too, which is nice. And it scales from 2 to 8 players. Um, And then I think the one that he was enjoying even more was this. It's a game, but it's also a toy, and it's called Suspend, and it's kind of like I don't know, somewhere between like pickup sticks and Tinker Toys, and so there's different games you can play with it, but you're balancing these long hanger like metal sticks on the structure, and someone could place things so it's almost about to fall, and now you have to place one, and so there's kind of that Jenga like element of like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. And then of course it makes a big noise when it all falls down, which is fun. And you can do other kind of puzzle sculpture things with it. So yeah, that's been a hit in our house. I would say, I think it said 8 up. I would say it even goes a little younger than that, but it's a good family game. Or you can just play with it as a toy.
Happy to report that all the game screenshots or photos submitted do not have any toilet paper in them.
That's right. So, Board Game Geek is cracking down on the TP lobby.
Thanks to machine learning and identifying toilet paper in photos submitted. That reminds me, Tesoro reminds me that there's really fun, speaking of relaxing games, Tesoro the Game of the Path. iOS game. It's not included in arcade, but it's I think I bought it at some point.
I think I have that one actually. Yeah,
and there actually is a multiplayer. It looks like it's 40% off right now, unless it's an old comment, but and you can actually play it multiplayer with someone. Like my wife and I played it back and forth, like you just turn based, and so you can share it the game that way and play it. And it's also an equally nice kind of chill game. I'm assuming it's a predecessor to the Phoenix Rising and other games that you played or you were playing. So it has a really satisfying sound of like the stone drawing the path on the board as you put a new piece down. I remember. So, anyways, that's another one. I'll put that in the show notes too, as an option for folks.
I would say Tsuro is definitely one of those games. It's got some nice pieces, but they're all plastic and the tiles are cardboard, like standard board game. It's definitely one of those games that if there were like a super deluxe edition made of like stone and wood inlays, right? Like it would be one of those games that would feel really nice as like the luxury edition, because you're like sliding things around, right?
Well, and after playing the the iOS version, I was actually really tempted to pick up, because it is an actual board game you can buy.
Yes.
I've been tempted a few times to grab it just because it was such a satisfying, to use an overused word my kids keep using, game to play on the iOS devices, but I haven't ever yet. So anyways, I'm going to pull that one out. I just re-downloaded it to play it again sometime soon-ish.
Yeah, well, we should try a game sometime.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I like Tsuro, and again, because it's one of those games that goes like 2 to 8 players. It's really good for kind of families of any size, or if you have varying availability or interest in playing games, right? Like if not the whole family wants to play, 2 or 3 people can still play, and it's still a fun game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's enough for this episode. Thanks for continuing to listen. If you are out there listening to us, I'm assuming you are, because you're hearing this meta comments as I make. And we will be back every 2 weeks with new episodes of 25 Cents. You can find us on Twitter at 25C Arcade if you have comments or thoughts on things we've said or didn't say. We'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, thank you for listening to 25 Cents, our video game podcast. You can find me on Twitter at iChris.
And you can find me on Twitter and most everywhere else as UltraNerd. That's NURD.
And you can find 25 Cents wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to check out our Good Stuff Patreon, patreon.com/goodstuff to join the network here. See ya.
Later, Chris.